Ja, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen der Presse.
Dear colleagues, members of the press, welcome to the third and last press conference at our third Synodal Assembly at Frankfurt on the Main. If you listened in during the photo session, Bishop Bätzing said, we've managed a lot and now we are done. We are quite exhausted. That might be the same for you. It has been an effort, and it's the last effort in the context of this assembly, an opportunity to ask the core questions again. You have the Synodal Committee in front of you, the President, Dr. Irme Stetter-Karp, President, Dr. Georg Bätzing, Bishop Bätzing, and the Vice Presidents, Franz-Josef, Bode, and Thomas Söding. All will start with a short statement on the Synodal Assembly. Then it is the opportunity for you to ask questions. It will be a mix of questions that can be asked here in the audience and also online. My colleague Matthias Kopp will keep an eye on it and be the moderator, co-moderator together with me. So let's start with the statement. So, from your point of view, how was this third Synodal Assembly? Full concentration, full communication, a lot of change for the Church, or not enough yet? My answer is this third Synodal Assembly was a success, or has been a success. The Central Committee of German Catholics asked to become more specific, to decide on changes. The three texts that were in the second reading were adopted, and this is satisfactory to me. So you could say that the Assembly has delivered results. So far, so good. I'm satisfied, but it's not, it's not prompting me to rest on our laurels. At the fourth Synodal Assembly, important implementation texts have to be voted on, and without them, this reform effort will not succeed. Reforms in church will only be a reality if gender justice is ensured, participation of all is enabled. So we will not be satisfied with the crumbs here. The synodal path has put on the agenda changes that have been necessary for decades, and I accept now of the bishops what Pope Francis said at the beginning of his pontificate, to find decentral solutions in order to open up ways for the future, to expect that the universal church solves problems that must be tackled locally is not our expectation as a ZDK. We must act locally, act here. Nobody can take this responsibility away from us, not even the Pope. In this perspective, with a strengthened level of energy and in close cooperation with Bishop Bätzing, Professor Dr. Thomas Söding, and Bishop Bode, I would like to move on the synodal path together with all delegates of the Synodal Assembly, whom I'd like to thank for their strong, great commitment. One personal note I would like to add, and it won't surprise you, especially women's rights in church are very dear to me. I have seen years where women made the church possible at a local level, but were not met with appreciation by the institution of the church. I'm no longer willing to let this happen. So I am personally affected. I expect that the fourth Synodal Assembly will bring forward implementation text with clear bishops' support. And this would really help us move our cooperation on a good deal. And I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bishop Bätzing is next. Frankfurt 3, that's the way you could call our third Synodal Assembly here in Frankfurt on the Main. It has been a big success, but at the same time, an intermediate step. I think that this atmosphere was constructive, free from fear, characterized by confidence. The discussion was characterized by arguments, but also by emotions. And last but not least, by big hope that we can change the church. The amendments, presentations that had been prepared by the Synodal Assembly, by the Synodal Forums, the texts were voted on and received large majorities. 3 texts presented were decided definitely, and 11 were voted to be submitted for further editorial and review work. I'd like to emphasize here that we are not mainly working on texts here, but we are doing something specifically to change the way church is acting, and a breakthrough into a more participatory culture, a more equal culture with a shared responsibility of all those who belong to the people of God because they are confirmed or baptized. To be more specific, we have decided that the believers in a diocese should participate more in the nomination or election of their bishop. We don't want to see the sacraments of the church, which is the blood of life for the church, that this blood runs dry because there's not enough priests anymore. We want to enable women to have access to a church's offices and services which are sacramental. A change of culture can also be seen and is necessary when it comes to shaping church labor law. That became evident through the brave action by Out in Church, the initiative, and a large majority voted in favor of such changes, as more than 90%, I'd like to emphasize here. With regard to the change of the basic regulations of church service, this text will enter into the deliberation process. Preliminary work has been done. You could say that this is basically about a new alignment or new direction of existing loyalty obligations, and all of this must help to give the church a clearer contours. A personal decision regarding life and partnership relationships should no longer be an aspect here in this regard. Now, how do we proceed? The working group, labor law of the Bishops' Conference, will work on this text, enrich them, and the evaluation of the basic regulations that was decided in 2016 showed it. It's not only about making small corrections or removing certain passages of the text. No, it is about a general review of the basic regulations. And the Association's Council of the Diocesan Association, with its General Assembly and working groups, is going to work on this. Then the Permanent Council of the Bishops' Conference, that is the diocesan bishops, and the General Assembly of the Bishops' Conference must deliberate on it and take a decision. Last but not least, we are looking for shaping a helpful communication together with those in charge in Rome. I already mentioned that at our kick-off press conference. What I reported to you is something I could also repeat during the Synodal Assembly, and it was met with great approval and with joy. The fact that we have a mixed discussion group between those in charge at the Secretariat in Rome and us, the Synodal Committee of the Synodal Path. So we'll set up such a body after this Synodal Assembly, and we want to get into contact very soon. So let me say that the Synodal Assembly, yes, a lot of energy was necessary. for everybody, a lot of effort, but there was a lot of discipline as well, characterized by a lot of disciplined work. But for myself, I have to say, it did not only cost me energy, it also fed me with energy, and that can be used for the future. Thank you very much.
Both vice presidents are going to dwell on specific details of the different texts. Bischof Bode. Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted. I was in charge for many years for young people, and I was for many years also the chair of the Pastoral Commission. I'm proud that we succeeded in what we did in the last 3 days, because I always wished for the foundations for progress. And we made this progress and the foundations in these days by creating the foundations that provide for implementation texts that will carry us into the future. This is a momentum that I did not even hope for, with a broad approval and an adoption of the many, as has been already illustrated, and a culture of exchange that was great. In the forum number 3, women in services and offices in the church, we reached far. The foundational text was approved by many people, and especially when it comes to a question of the diaconate of women, and for the opening for arguments with regard to further offices in sacramental ministries, women in sacramental ministries. And when it comes to the further development, we now have the unique opportunity to bring these questions to the World Synod, supported by good arguments and by tailwind that we take back from this assembly. And this is probably the difference to the past, that we can now integrate things into the dialogue with Rome, and also share things on a personal level, on this level, on that global level. And this is something that is necessary now, and that we will also foster from in our forum, and this is part of what the dioceses can already do. I would like to underline a second aspect. There was an initiative to have at the end of the Synodal Assembly be a confession of guilt. We established a working group speaking of the community of responsibility, because everybody is involved in their individual way, not only by doing bad, but also by omitting the good. We expanded that group. 4 were elected and voted for from the forums, and 4 additional members. So we can recommend for a dialogue on how to establish such a community of responsibility by a service or a signal and a symbol. This is part of our task ahead for this year. I'm part of this group, and I would like to mention that because this concern has been taken very seriously. And I see in that wind that we have also personally, I see the Spirit of God in there. We need, together with everybody and with wisdom and pragmatism, we need to continue our way and need to use the momentum that have been created. And, you know, on our very first assembly, there was this spirit of Frankfurt, and this spirit is still tangible. Professor Söding. One message here from Frankfurt is the Catholic Church knows how to carry out a synod, courageous, ambitious, and even on time. There are two resolutions that can be implemented right away, and that have to be implemented right away. First, power in Catholic Church is going to be separated. It's monitored. People have to manage and have to lead, but in a new way. The foundational text, Power and Separation of Powers, is to show what is possible in Catholic Church if people agree and are willing. The Catholic Church does not start at zero, but with regard to synodality, there's a lot of room for improvement, and this is an opportunity that we make use. The people of God, when it comes to the appointment of bishops, is going to be involved further and is going to participate in a sustainable way. And this is to show how important the office and the ministry of bishops is. There is the will for change, and now we need to establish a new regulation with regard to the chapters and the canon. And with the next General Assembly, we should organize for an item on the agenda with regard to this topic. We have an orientation text laying the foundations for the steps of reform, very important for our internal understanding and dialogue, but also important for international networking. The Synod established a theological GPS system. It allows for movement and creates orientation. Celibacy and sexual ethics were the topics that I mentioned at the first press conference. I was positive at that point that we will have positive debates and good resolutions, and I'm very happy that we succeeded. There was a clear plead for opening up celibacy. We heard bishops who said that they came to terms with the current model. There are no young men who want to start a career in church and become a church. And the opening is a really amazing opportunity for the overall church. And sexual ethics has been dwelled on also, and the people living together in our modern times and the tradition of the church, there is a gap when it comes to homosexual love, to sacramental marriage, to blessing celebrations for people who love each other. We set signals and set signs, and the majority for changes are high. But there were also objections, especially, not only, but especially on part of bishops. And I hope that the dialogue with the forums will further accelerate the debate on the topics. When it comes to the change of the regulation on the basic church order, the approval is a milestone. I went to Frankfurt because I'm committed to changes in the church. I will go home knowing that we set tracks, and we need to further develop in the Synodal Assembly, in the dioceses, and in our church. Thank you very much.
Ich danke auch, übergebe zur Fragerunde an meinen Kollegen Matthias Kopp.
I hand over to my colleague Matthias Kopp for the questions. We start with a colleague from the ZDF in the front row. I want to put some water to your wine. The Catholic Church during the last 2 or 3 weeks has seen stormy times. My feeling is that during this weekend there was a recovery. You know, you go home with a lot of spirit and energy. In 3 weeks, Kardinal Wölki will be back in office in Cologne. Are you concerned? Do you fear another storm? What is going to happen? Who do you address the question to? To the chair, Bishop Bätzing. I don't share this perspective that things calm down, because the energy of the Synodal Assembly, this is something I felt clearly on a personal level as well as on part of the Synodal members. This energy comes from the dynamic of the disappointment, of the scandal, of the anger, of the things that are coming up again and again. Insofar you are accurate. You know, we have a critical and a gaze of concern that we have with regard to Cologne, wondering whether there will be a new beginning. And we need a new beginning there in order to overcome the crisis in Cologne. Mr. Rottweiler, WTN. My question goes to Bishop Bode and a second question to Bishop Bätzing. Bishop Bode, you refer to the new insights of human sciences, and when it comes to magisterium, you refer always to the temporary obligations. What about the humane sciences?
Der Allgemeingültigkeit.
What about the humanities? Are they not linked to time and space? Bishop Bätzing, second question. What do you tell those faithful among your communities, with especially the young people who don't agree with the adoptions? You know, the initiative New Beginning, they object to certain aspects of the magisterium. Do you understand the irritations? Should they follow their diocesan bishop? Should they follow Rome? What do you tell them? Bishop Bode. First of all, on my part, it is about a tradition that is alive. And also the Council speaks about the vivid magisterium. So truth needs to inculturate itself again and again in the current time. And it has to start a dialogue. The tradition, the scriptures need to start a dialogue with the reality of people and the signs of the time. In the Council of the Apostles, this happened, and this is going to happen again and again in the history of the churches, that if humanities currently come up with certain insights, it might be that in 40 or 50 years' times, we will be confronted and have to deal with new insight. This has been the case always in the history of the church, that we start a dialogue. That does not mean that we give up our basic orientation towards Jesus, but we need to inculturate the Spirit in the times that we live in. And in that context, we need to involve also proven scientific insights and the knowledge. We owe that to the rational knowledge that we have. There was a second part to the question. Is that accurate? Bishop Bätzing? What do I tell the initiative Neuer Anfang, New Beginning? We share a common goal. It's about focusing on the very nature of church, focusing on the power of celebrating our faith together in a pious way also. But I see the danger that some initiatives want to skip the problems towards a new and old world. I do believe that if we want to focus on the nature of the church, so the damages and the pain and the suffering that people suffered from in the church, if we don't address that suffering, if we don't appraise that and have a true appraisal of that, there won't be a future of the church. And this is something we debated on in the Synodal Assembly. For example, sexual morality. No, it's not possible to continue with the old traditions because we humiliated, excluded, and hurt so many people. So beyond a renewal that needs to work in a repentance aspect also, beyond that there won't be any renewal, and we need to have people contributing to this. Mr. Driesmann, DPA, in writing, question to Bischof Bätzing and Stetter-Karp. The Vatican does not support the reforms of the German Catholic Church. This came up today. What do you say about that? And you always say that there is an openness in the Vatican for the reforms and the synodal path. Do you still believe that? And Nuncio Soterius was very critical. Any different signals from any other signals from Rome? Greetings from the Pope. What do they think about the German synodal path? Ms. Stetter-Karp.
Ich habe es insofern nicht als affront erlebt, was der Nuntius zu uns in
I didn't think it was confronting what the nuncio said to us,
Beobachtung der Versammlung war,
because
wahrgenommen,
I
dass
perceived it in a way that he shared his personal perspective with us.
aber es war kein
I heard it,
Resonanz auf die Versammlung.
but it did not resonate with the assembly. I can only support that perspective. There were three observers, and the contribution of the nuncio was rather a statement. The nuncio is the representative of the Pope in our country, and the nuncio was, of course, allowed to share his statements. I believe that we will find an understanding within the Roman Catholic Church, not in all aspects, not in terms of an automatic perspective, but as Bischof Bode said, it is our task. We have the unique opportunity to gather things that we consider necessary here in our church in Germany due to the challenges that we see here in our times. A church that wants to grow. And we want to give that back to the global church, to the universal church. And Rome is not the global universal church. But the universal church is present when all continents, when all cultural expressions come together. And the next occasion for that will be the Synod in 2023. Our colleague Dirkes. So the nuncio is the representative of the Pope, and he represents the Pope. This is for the question whether there were any other greetings from on part of the Pope.
Ms. Einig is next, please. My question is directed at Bishop Bätzing as well. You said that you don't think there will be an understanding reached with Rome in all points. Cardinal Marx mentioned one specific point during the deliberation regarding the admission of women to sacramental diaconate. So how are you going to explain to the people that, hopes may be raised now that might end in a big disappointment? And when would it be the point for you to say that, okay, finally we have not reached or come to an understanding with Rome here? Well, I'm going to repeat it. The question regarding some expectation management or expectation horizons is a twofold question. Nobody can say that he or she believes that an essential question as the sacramental access of women to sacramental offices is an essential question, and there won't be a quick fix or quick solution. Nobody in the Synodal Assembly thinks that this is going to happen. We have a realistic approach here. What we want, and we are not alone in that, especially we have seen that with our representatives from Austria and also the observer of the church in France, and that their statement shows that those are questions which are crucial, which are discussed in the universal church. Nobody can say anymore that these questions are taboo. So this is what it is about. But we do not simply want to put forward a request requirement, but deliver good arguments that are taken into account in the context of the Universal Church's discussions. This is why I'm so grateful for the format of the text in Synodal Forum number 3, because they are not simply claims put forward or requirements. No, they are good argumentations in favor of what is being requested. And I'm convinced that those arguments in favor of an exclusion of women from sacramental offices are no longer considered valid nowadays. So you can find arguments for opening up these services or offices for women, and maybe we need, or you would need much stronger arguments if you want to keep this access close. And this is not going to happen. Yeah, next colleague. The believers are to participate in a more, participate more in the appointment of bishops. Is that possible, or would that also have an effect on the concordates? Bishop Bätzing. Well, the expertise put forward by the working group in the Synodal Forum says that the concordates are not affected by this. And, you know, this is the construction, so to speak, is that the cathedral chapters bind themselves to decisions and the legal context. Mr. Müller is next. Thank you very much, Roland Müller of katholisch.de. My question goes into the same direction. Maybe you could say something in a more concrete manner. How should we go on? You spoke about the self-commitment for the cathedral chapters. Do you have, I don't know, some draft text in your drawer already? Ms. Kräuter-Kirchhoff said that, okay, you could start working tomorrow. Is that true? And is it only the cathedral chapters, or is it also the bishops who need to be involved? What is it going to look like in more specific terms? I think the president is to respond here. Ms. Stetter-Karp, of course, as well. Professor Söding said it. What is needed is to work on a framework text. The situation in the chapters in Germany is quite varied, and the participation rights of the bishops, of the cathedral chapters at the bishop's nomination and election is quite varied. This is why we need a specific look at the situation, specific proposals. But I can tell you that I will actually submit this implementation text to the deacon of my chapter, and then ask them for their opinion of what could be done. Next one is colleague Schromm. Michael Schromm of Public Forum. Yes, I would like to build on this question and be even more specific. What about such a self-binding or self-commitment? Could you actually oblige the cathedral chapter to commit itself? And what about, the situation or the scenario that the nuncio doesn't want it? Well, once again, self-commitment or self-binding means that I cannot impose an obligation here. It's a self-commitment, and you have to put it into the context of society. And I think the canons, as members of a chapter consisting of priests with a great many years of experience, and I think there is a general perception that it is time to change structures. The nuncio would have to intervene if it were about the concordates, because that's an agreement between states, or more precisely the Holy See and our country, or the federal states. If this matter were to be concerned, the nuncio would be somebody who had a say. But in our context, this is not necessary. Mr. Söding, do you want to add something? Well, self-commitment is self-commitment. We strongly put our hopes on the power of conviction and responsibilities in the implementation text that was drafted by the forum I belong to. One thing was clear: we will not touch the concordates. However, we will use the possibilities that these concordates open with regard to the current situation. The current situation did not come out of the blue. It is a situation that arose from certain historical conditions, and if these conditions change, then there's of course potential for an evolutionary development. And here we place our hope upon the commitment of the cathedral chapters. Ms. Stetter-Karp, I would like to establish a link to the question that was asked at the beginning regarding the situation in Cologne. Of course, well, our deliberation here at the assembly do not provide a specific answer for Cologne, but it is possible to ask against the backdrop of what was being deliberated, and you as journalists can do so, to ask whether in Cologne a participation may be realized and what might come out of it. So I just try to outline what you could see as an attitude on the horizon and new questions resulting from that. Last question here, Mr. Frank. I'm just thinking about Cologne. Okay, two questions, one to the President and one to whom it may concern. You said it has been a good atmosphere of discussions. There was, however, one neuralgic point when it was about a change of perspective in terms of anthropology, a look at gender, sexual orientation. Based on the documents presented by the forum, there was this idea that each person is wanted by God and loved by God, and then there was this argument raised that also pedophilic people are loved and wanted by God. And, well, what is against this argument, what stands against this argument that even a pedophilic person is a creature created by God? And what is the link with people who are not heterosexual? And it was being said that at the next assembly you might look again at how far you have come. When it comes to more transparency regarding critical motions, how far will you have come? There were a lot of cascades of, these motions with a number X, Y, Z, and nobody knows, nobody from the general public knows what is behind that. And the critics might not know that you cannot vote on 60S. Okay. There are quite a few misunderstandings here. The S relate to Antragsgrün, which is a tool where every synod member has access to, even during the assembly. And a summary of the motions can also be found on Antragsgrün. That was made clear during the second reading. So we have an informed situation allowing for bundling certain motions. So it doesn't hinder discussions, etc. No, to the contrary. And it happened in the intermediary phase. And this is why the Synodal Assembly, at the beginning, agreed upon this procedure. So maybe if you are external to this might seem disturbing and not very clear, because you, in your role as observers, you are not you have not seen the intensive work of so many between the moment when the texts were first put forward and today or yesterday when they were presented here. And the second question you raised, again, a misunderstanding. There were 2 points raised in the Synodal Assembly, or 2 moments, where misunderstandings brought about discussions and also, yes, certain resentments. But again, I cannot repeat it again, but what it became clear to me that a certain sensitivity concerning language is a high requirement pertaining to those who speak during the assembly. And there must be this sensitivity, for those who speak, but also for those who listen. And when it comes to the potential of misunderstandings, and this comparison of 2 things that should not be put next to each other, homosexuality and pedophilia, and this is not admissible to put like these 2 of them in the same context. And this was pointed out. However, this conflict was solved. There was a misunderstanding, but there was a reconciliation afterwards. And I would like to point out the strength. There's an effort in our assembly to reconcile dissenting opinions. Okay, I'd like to add on the question of how a plenary assembly of this size can work at all. The question of the logic of certain processes, of practicability, not only in this organization or assembly. And we have the same thing in the political arena, in parliaments or in other organizations. You need preparatory work. In our case, it is called forums. In other circles, it is called commissions or special departments, advisory boards, etc. And if you have a forum where 180 motions had to be worked on between 2 assemblies, and to put them forward or discuss them in a forum in all their details, then our conference would last at least 3 weeks. This is why this tool, Antragsgrün, is certainly the best way to allow people to participate in a transparent manner, but it cannot be repeated in the plenary. I admit that it's a difficult and may also tiring part for everybody, but the order of the day is just in time. Mr. Söding, do you want to add something? If I want to add something, it's just to join in with Irme, Stetter-Karp and Dr. Bätzing. And also because I was part of the team working in the engineering room, so to speak. We are a working synod. The assemblies are the highlight, so to speak, but a major part of the work is being done in a process of a very intensive critical reflection of the text. And I was part of the motions committee on the orientation text, and the way I understood it is that it became clear by the presentations that, well, there's a lot of trust in the basic decisions of the motions committees, and this is also why we have obtained such good results. But certainly we will have an evaluation of what could be improved in terms of transparency. Okay. Well, we have still one more question because we would like to finish at 4:30. Ms. Colombo is next. Thank you. I've got a question to the President. My name is Paola Colombo of Corriere d'Italia. The question of Italian Catholic missions in Germany. So the Synodal Path and the Universal Synod or World Synod, and after the words spoken by Jérôme Vignon this morning, How can the Synodal path, ensure a dialogue at the European level? Because, as you said, those are crucial questions also at the European level. Or do you see in other countries such as Italy or France, there are committees, they're not committees like the Central Committee of German Catholics. So work is being done by publishing things, by broadcasting things on the radio. And I heard something like a real appeal in the words of Jérôme Vignon. Did you perceive it like this as well? Yes, I totally agree. It was like a plea or a request to actually make available what is being worked on here, which is such a great thoroughness, so that it can be used in other cultural contexts or societal contexts. This is why I think when it comes to the preparation of the World Synod, I think it is good that the Holy Father said, first of all dioceses should have a synodal process of deliberation on their experiences with synodality and the topics that are important. Then the churches in a national context should prepare a report, and then the continental bishops' conferences, and not only the bishops' conferences, but also the active organizations of the laity should make contributions. And I think this is also being prepared. Ideas of the Secretariat of the World's Bishop Synod in Rome, ideas exist how such processes could be aligned. And it won't be easy for Europe because the situation of the churches in Europe are quite diverse, but there's a large degree of coherence when it comes to urgent questions that need to be decided. Ms. Stetter-Karp, you already said it. We don't have these same structures, especially when it comes to the laity. We don't have similar structures in the European countries, but we have possibilities that we can use as the ZTK for dialogue, for exchange. Today, in 2 weeks' time, we will have a meeting with our colleagues in Austria, so the presidiums or the board, so to speak, of 2 organizations of the Catholic Church in Austria. I just want to say that, we use opportunities for dialogue wherever they present themselves. Okay, Mr. Lassive. 2 short questions to Bishop Bätzing. One is a continuation of what Mr. Erbacher asked and what Ms. Stetter-Karp said. Do you think it's desirable that Cardinal Wolke returns to office again at Ash Wednesday? And what do you think of the idea of a co-adjutor? And the second question regards the implementation of the synodal path in the dioceses. Do you think it is probable that in the Diocese of Regensburg, one single decision of the synodal path will really be implemented? As to the first question, it is not part of the synodal path. And a much too specific question, so I cannot answer. And thank you for your understanding. And the second question is a question you should not ask me, but Bishop Bode. Regarding your question pertaining to Cologne, I think it's a critical situation. That's all I can say. And with regard to Regensburg, I could only repeat the sentence Bishop Bätzing said. Okay. Thank you for this unity on the panel. Ms. Colombo, just one more comment. A majority of the texts that are being negotiated during the Synodal Committee, the texts are available in several languages on the internet, so maybe this is a contribution to the European dimension. And we have Ms. Kelly of Irish Times to Bishop Bätzing and Ms. Stetter-Karp.
Fragt die Irish Times, es ist
They ask in February 2024, everywhere in Germany, women are baptizing children and celebrating Mass. Will that be the case? It's February 2024, and in Germany, still women don't baptize people. What are you going to do in this case? What should the lay people do? That is a very clever question. With regard to baptism, I'm positive, because in the declaration on leading the parishes, it says, and it is proposed, that non-clergy can baptize. Other sacraments? Well, with regard to other sacraments, I'm positive that there will be changes in the long run. For quite some time, I had to deal with the fact that the speed in Catholic Church with regard to the women's question, it is different from what is bearable for women in general and for me. So in February 2024, I expect, with regard to the access to all ministries and offices, and also to celebrating the sacraments, it will require more patience on my part. Let me add that the Bishops' Conference in its permanent council decided that the liturgical commissions, the Commission of Faith, and the Pastoral Commission, all three together, will draw up a proposal when it comes to the sacraments, especially to baptism, because there are dioceses who have specific considerations. Rottenburg, Essen, and also in Osnabrück, we're working on this. And we would like to join forces then in the Bishops' Conference. And I do see that in the upcoming month, up to the next year, these considerations will become more clear, and we will then have votes on these questions and will move further ahead. I wanted to add that because as a Bishops' Conference we are working on that. With regard to baptism. Last question, Mr. Schromm. Many delegates complained that the speaking time of 1 minute was too short and that the debate was a farce. What is your assessment? And the second question, will there be a Catholic Church with 2 speeds, depending on the diocese? What is your assessment for the future? Very spontaneously, I would like to answer with regard to the time in the debate. We find ourselves in a dilemma. How many people can participate? How many delegates can contribute in a certain amount of time? And how long can an individual person speak? I know many committees where delegates speak too long. This is why I believe that a limitation is good, also to make everybody speak and listen. And it hasn't been an hour right from the beginning, but at the beginning it was 3 minutes, then 2 minutes. And if many people put themselves on the speaker list, it was limited to 1 minute. And the second question, I lost the question. The Church of the different speeds. Well, this is already the case, if we are honest. I would agree, and this was always the case in the Church. Take a look at the Bible movement, at the liturgical movement. There have always been different speeds, especially when it comes to renewal and processes, similar processes. this does no harm to the universal church, and it does do any harm to the church in one country if it's slower than the church in a different country. Thank you so much. Thank you for your answers. The church of the two different speeds is characterized by a high speed here. We will continue our work. So after this press conference, we would like to give you the opportunity to ask questions to Dr. Irme Stetter-Karp as well as to Dr. Bätzing. We are going to organize this right in front of the panel. If you need original voices, comments from them, you are welcome to do that. I would like to thank the Synodal Assembly that worked on the different topics with high major concentration, and I would like to thank you for your critical accompaniment and for being our companions on the way. And it's a major inspiration, as Matthias Kopp said, and we as a press team very much thank you. We'd also like to thank the technical team and also the catering and everybody who took care of us so well here. Please be back. The fourth Synodal Assembly will take place soon. This will be in early fall, and we will have a fifth assembly. So this process will extend itself until the spring of 2023. In 2024, we will see baptism as it was mentioned before. Have a safe trip home and take the spirit of Frankfurt back to your offices and to your computers. Thank you very much.